You did everything right. You avoided the $80,000 dealership trap and bought a clean 20-year-old workhorse with a real frame, real iron, and a mechanical engine your grandfather could have diagnosed with a flashlight. You deleted the DPF. You pulled the EGR. Maybe you swapped to a mechanical pump that does not need a single sensor to run. The truck runs better than the day it left the factory. And then you pulled into the state inspection bay. The technician plugged a scanner under your dashboard, looked for an ECU that no longer exists, and handed you a red piece of paper. Failed emissions. With one scan, your analog survival rig became a 4,000-pound driveway ornament. But smart mechanics are not surrendering. They found the loopholes. Today we are covering every one of them. To understand why this works, you have to understand what changed in 1996. Before that year, emissions testing was simple. A probe in your tailpipe measures what came out, pass or fail. After 1996, Congress mandated every vehicle carry an OBD2 port, and the test went fully digital. The inspection computer now plugs directly into your truck's brain and interrogates the engine control module. It checks whether your DPF is present, whether your EGR has completed its cycles, whether every emissions component is installed and reporting correctly. If your truck has been deleted, there is no ECU to answer those questions. Your VIN gets flagged the moment that plug goes in. You cannot tune your way around it. The machine knows exactly what it's looking for. For decades, billionaires have been doing something you have probably noticed. A Ferrari or a Bugatti rolling through your city with Montana plates. The owner does not live in Montana. They formed a business entity in a low-regulation state, sold the car to that business, and drove it on a registration from a state that never runs an emission scanner. The loophole was designed for people to avoid sales tax on million-dollar cars. Blue-collar mechanics figured out that nothing in that strategy requires you to be wealthy. The loophole does not care what your vehicle costs. It only cares about the registration status. Loophole number 1 is the Montana LLC. Montana has no vehicle inspection requirements, no safety check, no emission sniffer, no OBD2 plug-in. Truck owners pay a registered agent in Montana, typically between a few hundred and $1,000 a year, to form a limited liability company called an LLC in their name. Then they sell their deleted truck to that LLC. The truck is now owned by a Montana business and registered in Montana. When you bolt those yellow Montana plates to your bumper, you are legally driving a corporate fleet vehicle registered in a state that does not participate in OBD2 testing. The local EPA station in your home county has no jurisdiction over it. You are completely invisible to the emissions enforcement machine. If forming a corporation sounds like too much, there is a simpler route. South Dakota. South Dakota allows non-residents to register vehicles there without ever setting foot in the state. You mail in the paperwork, use a South Dakota mail forwarding address, pay the fees, and the state mails you the plates. Like Montana, South Dakota runs no emissions testing program. Your deleted diesel is instantly exempt. No annual corporate fee. No limited liability company to maintain. For owners who want the out-of-state plate without the business structure, South Dakota is the easier path. If you do not want out-of-state plates at all, the third option is sitting in your own backyard, the historic vehicle exemption. When lawmakers wrote the OBD2 testing rules, they assumed that 25-year-old vehicles were museum pieces driven to Sunday car shows, so they exempted them entirely from the testing matrix. They did not account for the American mechanic. A 1999 Silverado or a 2000 second-generation Ram is not a museum piece. It is a daily driver hauling tools to job sites. But because the year 2000 is now more than 25 years in the past, a massive wave of the greatest analog trucks ever built is crossing the historic exemption threshold right now. The OBS Chevrolets, the second-generation Rams, the seventh-generation F-Series, are all aging out of the emissions matrix one model year at a time. Once you swap to an antique plate, the state stops looking under the hood permanently. For rural owners, there is a fourth option, the farm tag. In most states, a heavy-duty truck registered as farm equipment is legally classified the same as a tractor. Tractors do not have to submit to OBD2 inspections. The trade-off is real. Farm tag trucks are restricted to agricultural use and cannot be used as daily highway commuters. But for the owner keeping a deleted diesel on the property to haul hay or pull a horse trailer, the farm tag is an unbreakable shield against the inspection dragnet. Now, something happened in late March 2026 that every diesel owner needs to know about. On March 27, 2026, the EPA announced new guidance removing the diesel exhaust fluid sensor requirement for all diesel equipment. EPA. Administrator Lee Zeldin called the DEF sensor problem a nationwide disaster. Urea quality sensors, the components that monitor diesel exhaust fluid in your selective catalytic reduction system, ranked among the highest failure rate parts in modern diesel emissions equipment. A perfectly functional truck would derate and shut down on the interstate because a faulty sensor threw a false reading. The Small Business Administration estimated those failures were costing farmers alone $4.4 billion per year. The new guidance allows manufacturers to replace urea quality sensors with NOx sensors that measure actual tailpipe output rather than interrogating the tank fluid. It also clarifies that approved software updates can be installed on existing engines without being treated as illegal tampering under the Clean Air Act. Be clear on what this does not do. Diesel exhaust fluid is still required, SCR systems are still mandatory, and emission standards have not changed. What changed is how compliance is monitored. But this is the first time in over a decade that the EPA has publicly acknowledged that mandated emissions hardware was itself the problem. The inspection dragnet for deleted trucks is still running. The tide, however, may be shifting. Before you bolt on out-of-state plates, hear the risks clearly. States like California, Colorado, and New York have set up tip lines encouraging neighbors and parking officers to report vehicles with out-of-state plates that appear to be primarily driven in state. If investigators determine your Montana-plated truck is your primary vehicle registered to a paper LLC you have never visited, you face fines, back fees, and a forced local re-registration, which puts you back in front of the OBD2 scanner. There is also an insurance problem. A truck registered to an LLC is legally a commercial fleet vehicle. Your personal auto policy does not cover it. If you crash that truck on a personal policy, the insurer will find the registration mismatch and deny the claim. The loophole works, but only if you run the whole process correctly. That means a real commercial auto policy in the LLC's name and discipline about how you use the truck. The regulators say this is about air quality, but the OBD2 system does not measure what comes out of your exhaust. It measures whether the mandated components are installed and whether reporting is provided. A properly tuned, deleted diesel can fail, while a stock truck burning oil passes because the stock truck's ECU gives the machine the answers it wants. The system is about compliance with a parts list maintained by manufacturers, charging $2,000 for a DPF filter. The analog resistance is not going away. As long as Montana issues LLC plates, South Dakota mails registrations, and states exempt 25-year-old trucks, Mechanics will know how to use these tools. Have you used an out-of-state plate, an antique registration, or a farm tag to protect your truck? Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.